This is Remembering Smallville,
a Smallville rewatch podcast.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Brett. Hey guys, how you doing this week?
Good.
Good. We've got a fun little conversation for us today. We're going to go back blasted to the past for our high school days.
The best years of our lives.
Oh, don't even. So there's kind of two parts of this. First, I want to know about your mascot. Tell me what your high school mascot was.
Daniel.
Kim and I went to the same high school, and our high school mascot is the Beat Diggers.
Okay, Beat Diggers. Now, it's actually made the Letterman show on top 10 worst mascots.
Yeah.
The Beat Diggers made that.
Can you give us some context?
You're like a farmer who digs up beets.
Back during the Great Depression, Utah actually did a lot better than most states because of our sugar beet export.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1907, the high school, Jordan High School, was built. And they wanted to have a very important mascot, and it kind of saved Utah. And so it was a really big deal for like 20 years that the Beat Diggers was a big thing, but everyone has memory hold to that. So nobody cares. But I remember the SBOs would actually have to eat sugar beets when they were elected.
Yes. When you walk into our school, there's a big copper statue of a farmer holding a beet and a weapon.
Yes. His name is Digger Dan.
Yes.
Now, if you didn't know this, so my father was a farmer, but if you haven't seen how they actually crop and dig up the beets as a beet farmer, it's actually kind of a cool thing. They use, it almost looks like the Grim Reaper is
yes,
the
scythe,
tool
like
they
a
use.
machete. Yeah, scythe.
They take the weapon, the scythe, if
scythe.
you will, and they dig it down into the ground, and it pierces the beet. Then they lift it up in the air, and it throws the beet up into the air, and then they chop off the top of it. It's like a quick movement that they'll do as they go farming. It's actually kind of a cool thing.
Wow.
But it's still a beet digger, and it's something that the rest of us make fun of, including David Letterman, which is fantastic.
Yeah. What about you, Nicole?
I was an Alta Hawk.
So Nicole went to the school,
We were
the
rivals.
rich school,
Okay.
and I was supposed to go to Alta, and I was like, I will not go to that snooty school.
It's not that way anymore.
Nope.
I don't
No.
think it was then either.
Oh, it was.
It was the snooty school. We all
Yeah.
knew it.
Now they've got a new school in that area.
Which
you may have
took
heard
all the snooty kids and left all the
Yes.
non-snooty
Yeah.
kids.
That's exactly what happened.
Times
Kids
have
without
changed.
money.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we also used to joke that Alta High School had steroids in their water because like all the Alta High School like football guys were way
jacked.
bigger than our Jordan guys.
So Alta
Alta
is also very closely related to the Alta Ski Resort.
Yes.
Now, for those of you not local to Utah, I've heard several of you refer to it as Alta. It is not Alta. It is pronounced Alta. It is an Alta.
Same with Zion. It is not Zion.
It's Zion.
Zion.
Or Zion.
You guys have been watching
And
too much.
Tooele is not Thule.
Too much of the Matrix.
And
Tooele.
Hurricane Utah
It's
is Hurricane.
Hurricane Utah.
I don't call it hurricane.
We know it's our problem. We know this. My mascot was the miners. Mining things. It actually comes from the Kennecott Copper Mine. It's gone through some different owners over time, but it's actually the #1 provider of gold to Tiffany's jewelry.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
Which,
just want to
wait,
let you know.
a miner is just a little better than a beet digger.
Listen,
Please.
I'm
I
going to
don't
say
know.
they're a lot cooler than beet diggers.
Anything's better than
You
being
don't carry a
Smallville
scythe.
crow.
So with that said, what are some of the fun things you did for your Spirit Week to show school spirit as a beet digger, as a hawk? What did you guys do?
Oh, I loved Spirit Week. Like anytime I could wear a hat, paint my face, I would do all of it.
So our colors were maroon and silver.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd just all be decked out all week. And I loved that. That was always fun. I loved being decked out with everybody. I remember there was just like lots of little things. We used to have like a boys versus girls competition that the boys would always win. And we would have like a competition between grades of like who had the most decked out stuff. So for every person that wore something that was school spirit, you got a point. And then, we added this up and there were prizes. There was a big assembly. It was a fun time.
yeah.
I don't recall Spirit Week being a thing.
Nicole wouldn't.
I mean, Kim, when did you graduate high school?
07.
I graduated in 08. We were there at the same time.
Yeah. Well, so like hat day.
No memory.
Really?
None.
Anything to be a goof, I was all about.
Nicole didn't have school spirit. She doesn't care.
I didn't like go to football games or I wasn't a cheerleader.
I went to a few football games with friends.
To make out with a boy, I'm sure.
I did actually. They chanted it.
Behind the bleachers?
No, in front of everybody.
You dog.
It was at a Alta Jordan game.
Ooh.
At Jordan, and we were like in front of all the students right at the front, like in the front
student
row.
section.
And they got a touchdown, and so like we looked at each other and jumped around a little bit, and then we kissed, and then everyone around us started chanting. They chanted like his last name and my last name. It was like so and so kissed a so and so. I'm not trying to like dox myself or him, so they just like were chanting, and it got really loud.
Wait, so did you kiss again because of it?
Yeah, we dated for a bit. It was nothing major, but
I once was at a basketball game between Jordan and Alta, and I had to use the bathroom. And then when I came back, I was super decked out. It was painted and everything. Several of the kids in the Alta student section spat on me as I passed.
those jerks.
And I told
That's Alta.
and I told my friend
Nicole,
who
you're
was,
not that way.
I know.
I told my friend who's like kind of always in charge of all the chants, and he was in SBO, and he was like, "Oh, we're getting him back." And it turned out that one of the basketball players on the Alta team had a really high hairline, so every single time he had the ball, we chanted "Rogaine, Rogaine,
Oh,
Rogaine." It got
mean.
so bad that they kicked our whole student section out.
Oh.
Because someone spat on you.
I
Yeah.
freaking hate kids. I
really,
freaking
it's your
hate
fault.
It's my
high
fault.
school. I freaking hate it all. I hate when Bryn cheers at their rival game. I won't even go. Like, even the parents are psychotic. It's ridiculous.
Some people get way too into it. What about you, Brett? Did you have any Spirit Week fun stuff?
You know, we did Spirit Week a couple different ways, but I think the biggest memory I have for me for Spirit Week was actually our Sup for Santa runs that we would do. Our school, we went really crazy for Sup for Santa, and it was anything and everything from wearing school colors and hats to there was a kiss booth at lunch, and it was $1 to submit someone's name. You'd pay $1, and you could put two people's name, and they had to kiss. If they didn't want to do it, you paid $2 to get out of it. I got put in with the same girl 3 times in the same lunch,
And he kept paying
and I kept
to
paying to not kiss this girl.
That's so sad.
Oh my heck.
I was like, nope, not doing that.
You had to eat something with mustard
Sardines with mustard.
Ew.
if they got to a certain goal.
Cubes
or
of
something.
butter.
That's fine.
Just like straight.
Nicole.
There was one, we had the SBO's student body officers, that if we reached $40,000 towards Sup for Santa, they would shave off their armpit hair and eat it in a peanut butter sandwich.
Oh! Did they?
Oh yeah. We watched it during an assembly. That's a thing.
Why does this girl want to stay in high school forever? This is sickening.
Yeah,
So-
speaking of staying in high school forever. Brett, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today we're talking about Smallville Season 2, Episode 6, Redux.
In this episode, when the farm runs into financial troubles, Martha calls her estranged father for help. Meanwhile, students at Smallville High are mysteriously aging rapidly, and the school's new principal is a butthead to Clark. Sort of. And he's also kind of nice.
So we're doing a double feature, which means we're going to be doing 2 episodes in one because we want to get through them quickly, so we're not podcasting for 10 years, essentially. So we're going to talk about the A storyline with Chrissy, and then we'll do the B storyline with Martha and her dad, and then we'll jump around and kind of throw in any other important tidbits that we need to know for the episode.
So this episode is such a filler episode to me. I was so done as soon as it started. But how did you feel watching it, Kim? You're the virgin of the group, so
I got so excited. So our guest star is Maggie Lawson.
Yes,
Who is
Jules.
Jules from Psych. Or if
that's
you grew up...
who it is. I was like,
Yes.
she's so familiar. She's so familiar. Who is this girl? She's like a mixture between Amy Adams and the girl from Once Upon a Time, the lead actress.
Yes. Oh.
And I was like, who is she? Jules.
Yep,
Duh.
from Psych. And then if you grew up in my generation, she was also in Model Behavior with Justin Timberlake.
And 1 episode of Boy Meets World.
Yes, she's been in so much. But Nicole, have you ever seen Model Behavior? You should most definitely watch it.
Maybe I have.
It was
Is
like
that
a
where she
Disney-
switched places?
Yes.
Yes,
with-
okay,
yep.
with Justin Timberlake.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's
Yeah.
in my brain. It's there.
I know. I got so excited that she was on it. So it opens with them at a swim meet.
I guess this is not a contact sport, so Clark can do it.
He just fakes it still.
He must.
Well, obviously.
Yes.
In his swim form to like poke his head straight up as
Yeah.
he's doing. Yeah, it's not right.
Well, I think they might have to do that because of camera. You need to see
Sure.
their faces who's actually swimming because you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
tell as easily otherwise. I mean, you can tell the difference between Pete and Clark, but there's other reasons for that.
Chrissy kisses her boyfriend Troy.
For good luck.
And he
Try.
instantly is like, "Oh, my tummy rumbles."
Yeah, so he's
But
back in the pool after they have a little makeout
Uh-huh.
sesh, and something's wrong.
And Clark super swims after him because he sinks to the bottom.
we just
And
got to
What
see.
the heck is the lifeguard on duty doing?
Nothing. Texting.
Probably, yeah.
When we go to Bentley swim meets, there's no lifeguard.
No, there's not a lifeguard, but
I thought there was
it's
supposed
full
to be.
about
Even the
300
Olympics
swimmers.
has a lifeguard on duty.
No, I've never seen one.
Wow.
Weird.
Your kid's school is unsafe.
It's not her school.
No.
It's her swim
team.
school or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So, yeah, Clark swims super fast. Fun fact, and here's a little nerd moment about Superman. He actually can swim faster than Aquaman.
What?
Yeah,
That's
once
fast.
he's had his full strength, he can swim faster than Aquaman.
How do you know this?
Because they have
Comics?
a race in one of the comics, and Superman wins.
That's
Oh,
cute.
that's lovely.
He can
Okay.
just move everything faster.
And he can also run faster than the Flash when the Flash isn't using his like time travel super speed running. So as long as the Flash just does his max base speed, Superman can beat. Yeah. So a couple fun little things about how strong and fast Clark has to get before he becomes truly Superman.
They pull that guy out of the water, and he's all old.
This creeped me out. I
And
was
then
like,
he dies.
what is Smallville with old? Like
I know. And
so
the water.
much. And water.
Oh, but this isn't even connected this time. So Troy has died. He's old and gross. They decide that it's progeria, but it's not progeria.
I had to look this up.
Progeria.
Did you?
Yeah, I know about progeria. I watch TLC documentaries.
I had no idea what progeria was.
Progeria is a
I looked it
disease
up.
where you age more quickly, like your cells break down a lot faster, and typically the lifespan is because you have it at birth. It's a disease that you have at birth,
Oh, I
a
didn't know
deformity,
that.
and so the life expectancy is very young, 10 years old, 12 years old, 30 tops for really rare cases, and you lose your hair very quickly. Your eyes disintegrate into a blindish. You typically need very heavy glasses. They never typically have a lot of fat on them, and they look very skeletal, especially in their mouth area. They have osteoporosis a lot of times, and they look nothing like old people at all. It's a very different look, children with progeria. So it's just not progeria at all. And eventually in the episode they do say it's not progeria, which I appreciated because at the beginning I was like, that is not progeria.
Yeah, she was like freaking
Nicole's
out.
pretty passionate about this.
Well, if you're going to name a disease, don't just like bastardize it
Yeah.
first to fit something else for a comic book. It just doesn't, I don't like it.
So they pretty much just say that's what they think it is because that's the only explanation.
At the time, but then they find it out later that it's a little bit different.
With Chrissy, she is all about high school and she loves high school. We meet this new principal who wants to get to know all the students, and he asks her, "Oh, I need to meet your parents. Your transcripts are garbage." And she's like, "Oh, my guidance counselor was a total dead to the last school. I'll get it. Don't worry."
So, Kim, when you first saw her did you expect her to be the bad guy or a victim in this episode?
As soon as the principal was looking for her transcripts, I knew it was her.
Well, yes.
You knew that she's the bad guy. But when you first saw her appear in the episode, did
No,
you
not
think
at
that
all.
she's either going to be a bad guy or a victim? Because anytime they bring somebody in that's like
A one-off.
and they focus, they're either going to die or,
Yeah. I thought she was going to die.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either whether she's a victim or the bad guy. That is what happens.
Yeah,
I thought
usually
she
they
was a
die.
victim.
Or they get shipped off to Belle Reve, right? So we do get to see a little bit more with her a little later.
Yeah, she's prepping. They're doing the Spirit Week bash at the Talon in the
And she's
theater.
a cheerleader, and so she's,
Heading it up.
mm-hmm.
So Chrissy has the wrinkly hands and decides,
I was like, Mother Gothel, ew.
I know.
Yeah.
It's literally what Kim said. She's Mother Gothling.
yeah. So
There's
she,
the second I saw that. I was
yeah.
like, oh,
So she
yeah.
needs victim number 2, which is Troy's best friend for some reason, who's
Why not?
doing like some gel blue lighting and prepping for Spirit Week, and she kisses him. We get to see it, and we get to see him like be sucked dry. And I actually liked the visual there. It was so The Mummy.
Yes.
Brendan
God,
Fraser,
yeah.
right? So she sucks him dry. This happens a lot on this show, it seems.
Yeah.
People being sucked dry.
Old people and sucking.
Yeah. So she dumps his body behind the Talon, so they find out he's now dead. Second victim. And they now have connected it. Well, I saw Chrissy with Troy, and now I see Chrissy with I don't even know what the kid's name was, Barnabas, in the theater. He's now dead, and so Chloe does some digging on Chrissy. They find out, hey, I found Missy at her last school. Looks the same.
Look,
was that her name?
Missy before, yeah.
And then it's
I
like
didn't catch
class
that.
of 80 something, and
And
she's got super 80s hair. And then she's like,
Yeah.
I found her all the way back to 1921. So she's been doing
And
this for a while.
in the news around where she lives, there are 3 mysterious death aging cases.
Yeah.
They call them progeria cases. Knock it off, Chloe. So they now know that there's a pattern, and there have been 2 deaths. There must be one more.
Right. And before they'd said that, Kim actually in the episode had said, how many people do you have to suck on to stay young?
And it seems like it lasts her about 10 years.
Yeah.
Before she has to do it again.
So she has to do
now
3.
it's daily?
Yeah.
Clearly, there's something about 3 lives that lasts her. If she doesn't, it's incomplete.
That's creepy.
It's a weird thing that she's discovered.
Well,
3
and
is
we
the
find
number.
out
That didn't even occur to me.
we find out that it was more than 1921 too. That's as
Her
far back
parents
as
have been
That's
dead for a century.
because her parents
Yeah.
had been dead for over a century. She said.
So she must have sucked them.
Ew, no. No, she was at a
Can
girls'
we
school.
can we
Maybe.
just say that she like stole their life
And
Can
not
we
say suck to them?
We're not talking about the people she sucks.
Or sucking off. We don't want to say that.
Daniel!
Note
Sick.
to self. So it's really funny how this whole episode goes because it's that typical, villain of the week thing, right? But I do appreciate that, again, she's not a meteor.
Yes, she has nothing to do with
Yeah.
it.
Because it was before Meteor Freaks.
Yeah, way before. This is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So that is a redeeming quality, at
And
least.
refreshing. Yeah.
It is.
So
Now she does a good job.
the principal has said, "I waited again. Where are your parents, woman?" And she says, "Oh, they're gonna." That's how he sounds. I don't know.
Woman!
They're gonna be at the spirit thing before it starts.
Which is being held at the Talon, because you remember the Talon used to be a movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the coffee shop happens in what used to be the movie theater lobby. But there is that theater portion
Where they
of it,
play
too.
silent movies and do stuff.
And so they're actually using that for Spirit Week, which is fun.
So she says, "Well, just meet me at the Talon before the thing starts, and you can meet my parents then." So
And then gives
he-
him an evil look.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so
what
he
are you
shows.
doing?
The principal shows up, and she's hiding in the shadows, explaining that my parents died, and she's old and gross.
Yes.
And she's like, "Principal, I'm gonna
Suck you
say
dry.
it."
No, she's gonna steal your life. Just steal your years.
She's going to
So
suck the
she
principal.
knocks him with the Daniel.
I think that's illegal.
You think?
Nope, they're both adults if you're being honest.
She's real old.
Oh, that's a good
You know, just like Twilight.
Yeah, controversial, right? Yeah, if you are one of those people who is like immortal, but your body is still 16,
Yeah.
are you a minor still?
No.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Okay.
Stephanie Meyer watched this episode and was like, oh,
She
I could do something
100%
like that.
was watching Smallville, you
Yes,
guys.
we know this.
100%.
This has been confirmed by us.
Stephanie Meyer, if you're listening, please, comment. And tell us.
Chrissy knocks out the principal with a light very half-heartedly, and she's like leaning over him, aging horribly,
And Clark jumps in and X-ray
Just-
visions.
And he's like,
and just like talks her out of it and just delays her. He doesn't like stop her. He just kind of delays it, and she just looks at a spinning box and slowly turns to dust.
So I liked the spinning
which
box
Mother
part.
Gothel.
As the box spins and she gets older and older. I liked that. And then it was like
No.
cartoon.
The world's
It was
Yeah.
It's the
world's
worst
worst
CGI of
effect.
the series.
Yeah.
It's the worst CGI of the series. Horrible.
But yeah, she disappears forever and that's it.
And that's that.
It's super consequential, right?
Any thoughts on that before we move on to the B storyline?
I just put this happened before the meteor shower. Yay!
Yeah.
I think that's it.
I think she did really well with the role she was given.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
She did a good job.
It's not her fault that CGI at the end was bad.
And it's not her fault that the story means absolutely nothing to Smallville.
No.
But
And she's great in Psych, so it's fun. You should go check that out if you haven't seen that yet.
yes.
So what's the B plot then? The Kent farm always struggling with bills. All of those damages to all that equipment that Clark and all the villains have done is adding up. And they can't afford a basic bill for feed. And so
Martha is selling muffins to local businesses to try to make money, which we get the beautiful Clark grabbing the hot tray gag again.
Love it.
And so we get to hear that, well, Martha has a rich father that could help.
And I'm like, are the Kents just surrounded by rich, snobby people? That's how I feel sometimes.
It kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Martha says, let's call my father. And Jonathan is like, no, not even a bit. Never. And then Clark kind of decides, I want to be involved in the financial woes of my family.
Well, only because it's Granddad, which he's never met. And so that's his main interest. Sure, he's always wanting his parents to have financial stability. I grew up in a household where my parents struggled with finances, and you always feel like you wish you could help, but you're powerless to do so.
Yes.
I get that, but it is a little funny. He does butt his head in a little bit extra.
He really is involved. Martha does call, makes a secret phone call to her dad. He comes, and for my Gilmore Girls fans, that is Logan's grandpa on Gilmore Girls.
I knew he looked familiar.
And he's a dick on that show, too.
Yes.
It's the only acting he knows how to do, I guess.
He's so mean on that show, and he's mean in this show.
Yeah, he's kind of the worst.
He's not, like, no redeeming qualities
I don't
of this
know
guy.
why, but this broke my heart. I just imagine Martha coming from a beautiful, loving home.
And she doesn't.
No.
And I think that's why she chose Jonathan and not Lionel.
Yeah. Yes.
Because
she could provide a loving home.
She grew up with the business. Mm-hmm. She grew up with the money, and it didn't make her happy. She wanted love and hard work and
I love that.
Good quality, and that's what she picked with Jonathan. Honesty and being a good person. Remember when he was unconscious from the Nicodemus flower, and she asked to borrow his notes, and he just gave them to her? Mm-hmm. And it blew her mind.
Yeah, back when like college or whatever.
Yes. It blew her mind. Well, how do you know I'm going to give them back? Because that was unfathomable to her, that someone would just be trustworthy and just accept someone being trustworthy, because she grew up in a place of this wheeling and dealing business.
Yeah. There's always an angle. Yeah.
I always felt, every time I've watched this through, I feel like this episode should have been before the prior episode.
I agree. Like before she got the job.
Before she got the job. Because it makes sense where, things are tight. It's all there. But having this where we can't afford the feed, let me call for help. Let me do this.
And then them deciding that the dad isn't an option, get the job. That
sure, you could say like, oh, well, she gets paid bi-monthly. This is only a couple days after the last thing. So maybe she just hasn't gotten a paycheck yet.
She does say my paycheck from Lionel isn't going to be enough. She does say that.
But there's so many little things that if you just flip this, you could have changed that conversation. I always felt like it made sense, especially where nothing that happens in the A storyline impacts anything. So,
and same with this one. But this B storyline goes nowhere.
It does.
You're never going to see the grandpa again.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never hear a mention of him again. That's it. This is the only time it's why we're doing this in a double feature. Because while we like moments from this episode and parts are good, it goes nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere.
And speaking of going nowhere, Clark tries to get some things going on where he tries to kind of parent trap it a little bit with Jonathan and his granddad to get them to like work out their differences. It turns out that long time ago, Granddaddy Clark, which is his last name, because we found out that
so Martha's maiden name is Martha Clark.
Is that why she named him Clark?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we find that out in the next episode,
which we'll talk about in a few minutes. We have this whole thing where we find out that Jonathan punched him in the face because he was like, you're never going to amount to anything. You're the worst. You're not going to be able to provide my daughter anything. Punches him in the face. They haven't talked since. And it just doesn't get any better when Clark tries to parent trap them. Doesn't work. And Clark feels like, I'll just never have my extra family around.
And we also learn another reason why they have decided to not try to mend the fences is because of Clark. Mm-hmm. When Clark comes into the picture, they decide it's best if we don't have it be a big happy family, because we don't trust Grandpa Clark, right? Martha's dad. We don't trust that he will not say Clark needs to go to the scientist labs and be studied because he's an alien.
Which I thought was cute, but super heavy on Clark.
Oh, like, big, right? heavy.
But again, it's like inconsequential, which is annoying because this doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't matter. So Clark decides, I want to have a relationship with my grandpa no matter what. And maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. You'll never hear about it again. We can assume that maybe he has phone chats with him occasionally now. But that's all. We'll never hear about it again.
The only end result that I guess is slightly consequential is that he does give them some money.
Did they use it?
We don't know.
He says you can use it whenever you want. Here's a check. Use it when you want.
And I guess that is one redeeming quality about him, is he does provide the money. And that's pretty much that whole B plot.
Any thoughts on the grandpa?
Well, now that I know it doesn't go anywhere, no.
See, that's the thing. Like, I know this. I've seen it before. And so when this episode comes up, I just want to skip it because it's nothing.
I thought it was
Absolutely nothing.
Opening a can of worms. I thought.
Yeah, you'd think that you'd get more out of it, but they just kill it right there. There's nothing more to say.
I'm more interested in our C plot.
Lana?
Oh my.
Lana's cleaning out a back room, preparation for the Spirit Week, and finds some pictures.
Of her mother with some strange guy around the same time when Lana should have been conceived.
And when her mom was married.
Yeah. But then, we do find out later that there was some complication to this.
Well, here's my thought. Old tech question. I'm not a big person who printed a lot of photos. Did it tell you when the picture was taken or when the picture was printed on the back? Because it would print dates on the back.
Typically when it's printed.
So, there goes that plot.
And if you were with someone while you were married, because you were would you have taken the time to print those pictures and keep them?
I know. If you're only together for a little bit and then reconciled with your husband, why
like,
would you
what does she
those?
do? Like, go sneak off into her
You know what I
attic
think it
and be
was?
like,
You know what I think it was? It was freaking Nell.
It may have been that Lana's mom knew that Lana was not her dad.
Oh.
And
So
one
she
day
did
she may have to have that discussion.
A clue.
Yeah, and she may have kept him because not like she knew she was going to die in a meteor shower. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. So she
Because-
just kept him for the future conversation.
Because if she gets back with her husband and she's already pregnant, she knows that it wasn't his.
Well, yeah.
So then I might have to have this conversation one day. Probably planning to do it when Lana's a little bit older than 4 years old.
Yeah.
And then she dies in a meteor shower. So these are just stuffed in a box somewhere.
But I think it was interesting that in this episode, she doesn't ask Chloe for help at first.
Wow.
She asks Lex.
That actually surprised me a lot. I thought that's the first place she would go.
well, I think
Was
she
Chloe.
figures that Lex could hire a PI to go into it or something
Yeah,
because he'd be curious and be willing to help her. But
true.
or they just needed Lex to be in this episode. So
Yeah. And so in this episode, we just learn that this man exists. And in the next episode, we'll kind of get a little more info about him.
speaking of the next episode, let's finish wrapping up talking about this one.
We have one more little quick storyline. It's Principal and Lex.
Yeah.
The D plot,
The
I
D
will
plot.
say. There's a lot
Jeez.
going on, but
The
honestly,
D-bag. I mean plot.
not a lot going on. The principal is new. He is large and in charge, and he thinks that kids can't hop over a 2-foot fence.
It's like, Clark, I think you're a slacker. So you're going to write me a 5-page essay about where you see yourself in 5 years. And you do it is kind of good that Clark gets a chance to actually think through where he's going to be.
Because he hasn't. Yeah.
But it's also hard because with his powers and all of the things he's learned, what do I do with my life? There is a good plot of this episode that is kind of important that you could sum up, which is that Clark realizes through this whole process with him, I guess this is like an E-plot almost, is that Clark has to write this essay. He realizes he wants to study journalism in college.
Which I thought was so cute. And help people, he says.
Yep.
Well, Lex likes this principal.
Yeah.
He liked the principal. He doesn't know
he's
why
got
he's
a
so
really
pissed at
mature
the Luthers.
hindsight. That's the thing I love about Lex. He remembers being this unruly
Dickish kid,
child.
yeah.
And that lasted for quite a while, like probably till he was maybe 20. It seemed like he woke up and now he's realizing things and he's matured really quickly. And I love that. You get to see that with Lex and how he treats the principal.
You also find out that Lionel's a sketchy guy again.
Yeah, he did some shady stuff because what did Lex do? A prank?
He did Lex things like when he was kind of the worst. And
He's like
it
Logan
added up.
Huntsberger for my Gilmore Girls friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was at this fancy school with this fancy principal. He did a stupid prank, was set to be expelled. Lionel shows up, bribes the board of education at the school, and says Lex can stay and the principal can go.
Yes.
And that's why the principal's now teaching at dinky Smallville High.
Instead of being on the board of education.
Yeah.
Which I actually do appreciate what he does for Clark.
He does. He's good. He's a good principal.
I think he's maybe a little brash, a little bit abrasive.
He's a bit military.
Yeah, but he genuinely does care about the students in his school and them succeeding. And so he sees Clark kind of just drifting by. He's more intelligent than he's actually showing, and that's a really big deal.
So, on that episode,
Man or Superman, y'all?
Man.
Man.
Man. Obviously. None of this goes anywhere. Absolutely skip it.
Does not.
You don't need to know any of this.
Doesn't go any other ways. There are a lot of songs in this episode. In Redux, we have Boom 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 by the Out There Brothers, Be Aggressive by the Jock Jam, I Don't Know by Tom Racer, All My Life by the Foo Fighters, Mickey by Bewitched, You Girl by Sophie Agapios, apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, You Ugly by the Jock Jam, Can I See You by Buva, I Feel Fine by the Riddlin' Kids, Ivanka by Imperial Teen, and Somewhere Out There by Our Lady Peace.
Jeez.
Man, there was more music in that episode than there was like
It's
content
because
points.
it's because it's all like cheerleading.
Yeah.
Be aggressive. Be aggressive.
Yeah.
We should have had your daughter on. She's a cheerleader.
We
she could have given
wanted
us some
to have her
insight.
on, and she was like, I don't have time.
Fine.
Because
Butthole.
she's a cheerleader. No.
Yeah.
Too busy planning Spirit Week, I guess.
Exactly.
Speaking of children not being super great about stuff like that, let's talk about Lineage. Time for part 2.
I told a joke on a Zoom meeting, and no one laughed. It turns out I'm not remotely funny. Now, if you laughed at that, you should follow us at Remembering Smallville on Instagram. If you didn't laugh because this is a terrible joke, you should follow us on at Remembering Smallville. We'll get into this next episode. This is Season 2, Episode 7, Lineage.
In this episode, a woman who is another redhead appears in Smallville claiming that Clark is her biological son via Lionel Luthor. And she kidnaps Lex to force a confession from Lionel. And then in this episode, we get other plots around Clark demanding that his parents explain how Lionel was involved in his adoption. And we also have Lana pursuing her parental lineage as well, hence the title.
Okay. A storyline, let's talk about Crazy Mother. In the B plot, we'll talk about the flashbacks, and then we'll talk about Lana in the C plot.
Sounds great. So let's talk about this crazy lady. I kind of feel bad for her in the beginning a little bit, and then again at the end a little bit, but she also does some pretty stupid stuff. So it's kind of complicated. I don't know. What did you guys
She's
think?
absolutely a mess.
I've been in a relationship where someone makes you feel crazy, so I feel for her. I'm so sad to be manipulated by Lionel. You know how in the last episode, Nicole, you said that when he's done with people, he just kicks them to the curb. That she is 100% that happened to
So this
her.
is her story. She is Lillian, Lionel's wife. She's her nurse. The wife is dying. She somehow gets close to Lionel, and they diddle. They diddle enough that she gets pregnant.
Yes.
Lionel tells her, you have to give the baby up for adoption because gaslighting, I'm guessing. He tells her something to convince her. Money. He gives her
Makes
money
her feel
also.
crazy. Like
Yeah,
she
it makes her
needs to
feel
go-
crazy.
And his name is Lucas, this
Lucas.
And he puts her, Lionel puts her into a crazy institution.
She's there for a while, never spends the money. She either gets the clean bill of health, obviously lying because she legitimately is a bit crazy. But is that her fault? Is it not? Hard to say.
Right.
She escapes, buys a house, and then does some tracking down because her son was adopted out.
via this particular adoption agency that only did one
One
process of one adoption for one child, and that was Clark on record.
I've been waiting for this because they talk about this in the
In
first
season 1, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, finally, I get to learn. Yeah.
So she assumes that's my child because it's the only adoption agency that we used.
And when she sees him, she sees this dark hair, and he's tall and handsome, and she's like, yeah, that's Lionel's son.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even
So
think
she's
about that.
convinced that Clark is her child. She breaks into the house and touches a picture. Then she sneaks into the school and is like, Clark, I'm your mother. And then Clark's parents go chat with her.
And it's frustrating because you're like, well, we all know that Clark's from freaking Krypton. Clark doesn't know that, but he knows he's from another planet. There's no way this chick is his mom.
And she just thinks like, you don't understand. And they're like, no, you don't understand.
But even so, it still stirs up feelings in Clark of,
Wanting to know where you're from.
yeah.
And the whole process of this lady thinks this because of the adoption agency. So what's going on, Mom and Dad? I need the full story now.
which we'll talk about a little later. This lady,
Cannot be convinced that Clark is not her son.
so she goes to the police and she goes to Lex. Both things have consequences. Lex, she convinces him how amazing it would be for Clark to be his half-brother.
Which I was like, oh.
I know.
And so Lex clearly wants it so badly. And then she goes to the police to order a DNA test.
Which is valid to do.
At first, I was like, oh no, they're not going to be able to get the needle
I
in.
know, I thought the same thing.
But then Brett was like, no, they can't know his DNA. They're going to know.
That alone, both things are not going to work. Luckily, it's just a spit test, so they're not having to like break needles onto his impenetrable skin.
Yeah.
And I love what's silly is Pete and Clark go break into the facility, and Pete has no idea why he's there.
And I totally called it before it happened.
Have said, hey, Pete, we got to go swap spit. Come with me.
Yeah.
Instead of, Pete, no explanations. Just come with me.
That's why
I mean,
love
if
Pete.
my
He's
buddy was like,
for it.
hey, you want to go swap spit? I'd be like, I'm not making out with you.
No, but Kim called this.
Yeah.
She said, why don't they just have Pete swab his cheek and use that?
They
Boop.
do it.
They do
Nice.
exactly it.
And
Good,
Brett stayed stone-faced. I was
good
like,
job.
But it'd be funny. Clark, did you know that you're black?
I know. I was like, what does the DNA say?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I was thinking. 97% African American. I was like,
That'd be so funny.
So I doubt they even processed it by the time all the other crazy stuff happened.
Well, no, they do process it. They process it, and it turns out
That it's not. And
that it's not.
Right.
And she's like, you must have done the...
tampered with it.
so
Lionel.
she goes to Lionel, and Lionel like uses his charm to like almost kiss her.
Oh
Are
my
you still
gosh,
guys,
she
he
still
creeps
has
me
feelings.
out.
She's okay.
She was into it. She would have been cool with it if it would have gone all the way.
Yes.
She would have been like, let's make another one.
Uh-huh.
My eggs are viable. She's crazy.
I
This
know,
is not
I
the
know.
first redhead that Lionel has paid off to
I
go
know.
away.
Yeah, this
I
is
was
where it
like-
really comes full circle, doesn't it?
I was like, why did they make this lady look just like Martha?
I
And
know.
now it makes sense.
Just
Lionel has a type.
Yeah, he's got a type for sure.
He likes a redhead.
Watch out, Kim.
Except unless it's a sexy reporter
Right.
or Victoria Hardwick.
Well, he'll sleep with anyone,
But
but
who he's
redheads are
attracted to.
his.
He only makes babies with redheads.
Hey,
And his kids...
Lex is a redhead.
Because
Yeah.
so is Lillian.
So the mom. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lady she freaks out and she decides to do her last resort, I guess, and that is kidnap Lex.
It was so funny because we were watching and Daniel goes, I'm feeling bad for her. And then she walks up and like stabs Lex in the neck with
a needle?
the
That's
needle. And he
exactly-
goes, never mind.
Not occur
I feel
anymore.
none bads.
Yep.
And that was really impressive. She just snuck a needle into his neck, which I'm pretty sure that if you just jab that into somebody anywhere on their neck, it's not going to necessarily work anywhere in the neck. I feel like you have to hit,
A blood
I would
vein.
Who knows what drug that was?
but still.
If I
those
was
things
Lex,
always-
like open your car door and slam it into her, do something instead of just being like, ah.
That's true.
this is
Fight
why
back, people.
this is why I carry in my car. But
There you
anyway,
go, bad guys.
yeah. So she takes him back to her house that
Newly
she bought,
bought house.
and she's got him all tied up.
She demands that Lionel hold a press conference to announce that that Clark is her son and to do all these things, or she's
she'll
going to
kill
kill Lex.
And meanwhile, Clark goes to Chloe, and Chloe to the rescue. Good old being able to find anything, anywhere, and anyone. She sees the address, and Clark does his disappearing act.
So the address of the house that she bought is Blueberry Park Lane.
Oh, I love a cute address.
Why must it be a murder street now?
And she bought it under the name of Lucas,
Yeah,
which of course.
that's creepy.
because she wants to give it to him as an inheritance. They're going to live there together and be together forever.
She picks up an axe, and she's like, I'm going to axe.
This was so creepy.
Luckily, Lex gets a foot free, and he kicks her, and she's unable to do it. And then Clark comes, and the axe explodes on
him.
Clark.
We've been through this with knives too, guys.
What's crazy is Rachel Dunleavy. We haven't said her name yet. Her name's Rachel Dunleavy. She sees Clark break an axe on his bare body, which, boy, was she hitting hard. A. B. Her reaction isn't, my son is so strong. It's, you're not my son, I guess. Like that moment just convinces her somehow that couldn't possibly be her son.
Yeah, like you're
And
from
then-
another planet.
And then what's crazy is luckily Lex is unconscious, of course. The concussions on these people is just astronomical. No wonder they go bad. They get that like football player head injury
CTE,
rage.
yeah.
That's why Lex goes. That's what turns him. All of his concussions.
all of his head injuries.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, Rachel Dunleavy suddenly decides, you're not my son. You're too strong to be my son, and my children would be weak. And like crumbles into a ball and cries, and Clark comforts her.
Yeah.
He's like, they're there, psycho. They're there.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay,
He's pretty compassionate.
I guess. Not Lex, are you okay? Just keep with your head trauma. I gotta comfort this psychopath. She, I'm sure, goes back to some facility.
Yeah.
And Lex goes to Lionel and is like, well, she did have a kid, right? And he's like, yeah, she did. And we did adopt him out, Lucas, but he died when he was 1. And Lex is like, oh, okay.
And then
And then-
leaves the room.
Uh-huh.
Brett, tell us what
He
happened.
leaves the room. Lionel opens a locket and finds a picture of Lionel with probably 8-year-old
Yeah.
boy.
Meaning he did not die as a
With
child.
a piece of his hair.
Yes.
And he's like combing it in his
My
fingers.
son.
Which I will say I gave Tim a little spoiler, and I will to our listeners as well. You do actually get to meet Lucas.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is one of the only things that doesn't just not matter.
I would
You
have
will
been
meet him.
so mad if nothing happened.
You will
from
meet him,
this.
but not for a bit, I don't think. I don't remember. I don't remember when.
I checked. It's later this season.
Oh, okay, good.
Yay!
Well,
I know.
Speaking of talking about later, we mentioned multiple times about these flashbacks, and it is now later. So let's talk about that.
Oh, my favorite part of the episode are these flashbacks. You get to see the day of the meteor shower again. You get some of the exact same footage to like bring us back into it.
Plus new stuff.
New
and
stuff.
they did
Loved it.
really great transitions in these.
Oh yes, going
like-
from one to the other, back to the
Yeah, like when
Oh.
Martha's talking to Clark in the kitchen and the camera pans and then there's young Clark. It was so
and how
good.
it,
Yeah.
They
and
did
the
several
lighting.
of
Oh,
these.
so good.
So good.
So we learned in that particular flashback where Clark got his name,
Yes.
right? Because Ethan the cop's there and Clark runs in there. Martha has to come up with a name really quickly. She goes, "Oh, I thought we could just use my maiden name as a
His-
good name." So they called him Clark right then.
Talking to
Oh,
my
they told him Clark right then.
So good. We get the first flashback of the car upside down, them seeing Clark. They wrap him up in a blanket, and that red truck is obviously upside down. So you see Jonathan run, and he finds this blue truck, and sadly the guy inside has got a meteor to the like shot in the head,
Yeah.
essentially with a meteor. And I like that Jonathan like paused and was sad because that was his friend. He knew him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't just like throw him out.
Yeah, there was like this moment of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so
When they were upside down in the truck, I was like, oh, Nell's flowers.
the uncomplicated tulips.
Yeah. And he grabs the spaceship and puts it under a tarp in this
Yeah.
truck bed and they drive off.
Yeah, so Jonathan steals a dead man's truck.
Well,
What are you gonna do? Crisis.
But what happens next?
Lionel comes out.
Lionel is literally in the same truck as the spaceship.
I know.
He could have just looked back.
Well, did you notice the acting before Lionel
like that
comes into the truck?
shocked.
Where he's like,
Like,
oh,
what?
my
help
son."
me, my son. Like,
Yes.
And he's like,
he's a different person.
oh,
Yeah.
so good.
I liked how Lionel was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't
Like,
even
not
pick up his son.
comprehending.
Yeah.
And Jonathan does it for him. And
I've been in that situation, you guys. Bryn was choking,
Oh,
and I just stood there and screamed for my dad. Like I was in shock, and her grandma had to give her the Heimlich. It was terrifying. So
Yeah.
I was like,
well,
oh, I
when you're
get
not
that.
used to situations
Oh,
like that,
yeah.
you're not going to jump to it. Usually it's experience
Especially if
that
it's someone
gets you
that
into it.
you care about, right?
Yeah.
Like Jonathan's like, oh, I can jump in and get this guy's son. But when it's your own, right? Yeah.
yeah. And I've always had this thought. Lex has this little tuft of red hair left.
Yeah.
And I always wonder if he has to shave that little spot every day.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's not off right then, but every other part of him's already bald, but maybe that little patch still grows, and he has this little boing of red hair.
You should grow it out and braid it.
Yeah.
Like his Padawan braid.
That would be funny.
So based on that flashback, we find out that basically Jonathan has incurred a debt from Luther. And so you can see where this is going at this point. But we kind of have that interruption where all the other stuff of the A plot is going on. And so we're like, oh, well, let's come back for part 2 of the flashback later.
I loved it.
And we get
So
the
good.
part 2.
Part 2, we find that they are able to go through the adoption process with Lionel Luther. Lionel Luther is able to arrange this, and when he brings the paperwork to the Kents to finalize the adoption so it's got a record of it, he decides to say to Jonathan, hey, I've got this taken care of. Could you do me a favor? Could you
That's
go
the
talk?
part 3 of the flashback.
Oh, part 2. Oh,
Oh.
Part 2 of the flashback is with them in the house and Martha just unanimously deciding that we've adopted a child without really asking for it. Then part 3 is when he shows up and it's been finalized.
So tell us what he blackmails him with.
he asks Jonathan to speak to the Ross brothers to sell their creamed corn factory to Luther Corp.
And I just remember thinking, oh, that's why Jonathan hates Lionel so much.
Because
That's
of his own
exactly
guilt,
why.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's happened, the oil spills that killed his cows, wouldn't have happened if he didn't sell to that. All of his bitterness that he has towards the Luthers is also about himself giving in to this type of a deal.
It's very complex.
And he had to do it out of necessity because they understood.
They needed a legal adoption.
Yeah, when they understood that if they didn't protect Clark, he would be put into a hospital forever. And can you just imagine?
Sacrificing your morality for your child.
There's a comic book, and I think they did this with cartoons as well in DC, where there is a scenario where Clark was actually found by the U.S. government, and he gets just locked.
It's like a what if series.
Yeah, the what if includes Aquaman and Wonder Woman, their nations going to war, and it ruins the Earth. The reason why that happens is because Superman was found by the U.S. government and then just kept under observation for years and years and years, and he's really, really skinny, and like when he escapes, it's really good stuff. So you should look into that if you're interested.
Wow.
But super good stuff here. Getting to see Lionel's acting be different.
As younger. I just love the visuals in the past and baby Clark. Oh, I loved it. Well, C storyline. It's short and sweet.
Very short and sweet. Lana decides that she is determined to find from the source who this man is because of Chloe. Chloe kind of helps her think through, oh, well, why don't you just find out?
I can tell you how many parking tickets he has. I can tell you if he flosses, but if you want to get the answer, go knock on his door.
And so she decides to do that, and she ambushes him. And it's like the worst time. He's like on the phone and he's really angry. She tells him, I think I'm your daughter, and shows him the picture. And he's like,
And he does not take it well.
No.
and I don't think you would.
No.
Especially
No.
in that on that day. But it turns out he's not a bad guy. He's not.
He's an activist.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
he's a darling actor. I was like, oh.
yeah, he was just like, you know what? After some thought, maybe I do want to figure things out.
Yeah, he tells her that he boycotts the Talon because the Luthers own it, and she's like,
She's like, this is so complicated.
And then eventually he shows up at the Talon and is like, it's not that bad here. I don't know if I'm your dad, but I'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
loved it.
and that's really sweet.
She could have a parent that's living. Like, this is so cute. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is also a not inconsequential thing. This whole episode is not inconsequential. But the best part really is just these flashbacks, finding out what Clark, the whole adoption process.
It's a juicy, meaty episode,
But also not.
but also weird. Yeah.
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 Which is why we put it into this double feature.
Any last thoughts before we kind of wrap it up?
I thought just one little fun thing. I thought it was a really neat little tidbit for us superhero lovers of Superman. Watching him make toast with his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I love that
right
part.
at the beginning.
Like that was just a cute little thing for me.
Yeah, I love that part a lot.
Do you know what else I loved? Clark rubs Lex's face.
In the car.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and then he goes sleep.
Unconscious.
I loved it.
There were some really cute moments for sure. The toast, the face touching, Lionel being kind of creepy. I liked it.
There were some sad moments with Chloe, like talking about her mom.
Oh, yeah, because
yes, let's talk about that.
There's
was
this
a
whole
little
part
moment.
where it turns out that because Rachel Dunleavy,
has been emailing Chloe.
and so Clark gets super mad at her, and
Like, I told you to stay out of my business.
like,
Just
your
'cause-
mom
yeah.
just abandoned
Find
you.
your own
so-
mother.
Yeah. And it's,
I know where she is. The point is that she doesn't want to be with me.
Oh, it broke my heart.
But then Clark and Chloe get a good moment at the end of that episode where Clark convinces Chloe that she is
Worth it.
worth it. She's not unlovable, that she deserves it. And that was a really great moment, I think.
yes.
Chloe's life isn't super easy.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was a good thing not to miss.
Yeah.
But we probably did miss some stuff. So you guys go watch the episodes and you should comment what we missed.
And
Yeah.
tell us if there's other things that we should have talked about.
But what was the music in this episode, Brett?
Again, another music-heavy episode. We have "Blame It on Me" by Boss House, "Otherwise" by Morchiba, 17 Years Down by Wonderful Johnson, "Put It Off" by Pulse Ultra, "Yesterday" by Chris Hefner, Start Again by Sander Selver and Jeremy Kay, and Un bel diverdemo by Renata Telbaldi.
Wow. What a freaking spread of music, huh?
That's all over the place, huh?
A charcuterie board of music.
So this episode's complicated. You know, when we're talking about Super or Man, I think that it's important if you care deeply about the whole adoption process and things like that.
Yes.
And I do think it's also important because there's plot relevant things to Lana and this guy, Mr. Small. It turns out he's one of the Smallville Smalls. So Smallville, we learn also that it's called Smallville not because it's just small, it's because
Of the
a
family
family
name.
called the Smalls founded it. And so this guy's a direct descendant of the Smalls, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's Man because it feels insubstantial and substantial at the same
Right,
time
like
to me.
you could
Yes.
skip it and you'd be okay.
But it's also got a lot of info in it, which is great.
I think watch it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Watch it, but I'm
I'd say
going to
it's
say
super.
Man.
I think it's super.
I do too.
But barely.
Mm-hmm.
It's like super on kryptonite.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, let's say that. Super on Kryptonite. I agree.
So it's super, but also bleh.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brett?
And that's not Ubermensch.
What?
Ubermensch.
What's Ubermensch?
It's Superman in German.
Oh,
It's kind of anyway. That's a nerdy moment.
that
for
was a
anyone
bit
that
over my
pays-
head.
No, I would go with it's a Man episode, but I do think you could make the argument to make it super because of the details that are in it.
Well, everyone, next week, get your tissues, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for remembering Smallville with us. Join us next week when
I cry.
I cry.
And Ryan cries. Somebody save me. I mean, save me from not having enough money. So please like and subscribe and comment so that the YouTube gods will pay me.
Four friends on a mission. Daniel, Nicole, Brad, and Kim. Talking Smallville every week. The podcast a gem. Smallville nights we laugh out loud. Every week they make us proud. Daniel, Nicole, Brad, and Kim. In the world we find our thrill. Heroes fire, legends grow. Stories shared, they make it flow. From Clark Kent to Lexus schemes, they uncover every dream. Smallville nights we laugh out loud. Every week they make us proud. Daniel, Nicole, Brad, and Kim. In the world we find our thrill. Watching tales of old, their voices pure gold. Every twist, every turn, with them there's much to learn. Smallville nights we laugh out loud. Every week they make us proud. Daniel, Nicole, Brad, and Kim.